Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. This is a special wellness series that's produced by the Society for Integrative Oncology. My name is Lee Leibel, and I'm delighted to be your host, not only today, but for the next 13 weeks. I am the chair of the Yoga Special Interest Group for SIO, and I also have a mind-body practice at Columbia University Medical Center, working with cancer patients going through cancer care at all stages of the continuum. I am delighted to be here to introduce our first episode, which is Introduction to Mindfulness. And before I introduce Erica Long, who is one of our guest panelists today, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what Wellness Wednesdays is going to look like this summer. So every Wednesday, we will upload a fresh new 20-minute video on a different mind-body practice. And then we'll have this live Q&A with experts from the respective fields to have a nice conversation around these different disciplines. What we really wanted to do was to show you the breadth and diversity of evidence-based mind-body practices that are so important to help us manage stress and to cultivate resilience during difficult and challenging times. So if you think about the program for the summer, it's thoughtfully curated, almost as like a little tasting menu, to bring you practices from different disciplines and different traditions. So we hope that you'll join us. This will be your prescription for wellness this summer. We hope you'll join us every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time for the live Q&A. So just a quick explanation of how we will structure today's talk. We're going to do this a little differently, and please give us feedback using the chat function down here. We're going to start with the interactive section, the question and answer. And we'll do that for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. We honor your time and know that it's lunchtime, so please feel free to hop off anytime. But we will stay on the line until the very last question. We are going to, in the chat, you'll see at the very top, there's a link to SIO's YouTube channel. And that's where this 20-minute pre-recorded video will be. So when we finish our Q&A, you'll click on that link to either go immediately to watch this 20-minute practice, or save the link and watch it at your convenience. So with no further ado, I want to introduce Erica Long, and do we have Carol on the line?
I believe Carol had she was having technical trouble, and she was trying to dial in by phone since the video wasn't working. I'm not sure if she can hear us.
Okay, so this is where a mindfulness practice comes in handy. We'll just take a deep breath. And if Carol's able to join us either live or by phone, then we'll bring her in. So Erica Long, I want to introduce her. She is the co-founder of the Community Mindfulness Project. This is a 501(c) nonprofit organization that's based in Connecticut. And their mission is to offer science-based secular meditations in communities to anyone who cares to learn to meditate. And it's donation-based, so pay as you will. During the pandemic, they actually hosted 17 live call-in meditations every week for anyone, actually anyone in the world that wanted to call in for these meditations. So Erica's background, she is a certified mindfulness instructor at the professional level. She studied under Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield, are huge names in the mindfulness community. And this is all in partnership with the University of Berkeley Greater Good Science Center. So Erica, what is mindfulness and why is it especially important for us to practice mindfulness right now, given what's going on in the national conversation?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I'm a big fan of John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness. He was one of the first pioneers that brought secular science-based, evidence-based meditation techniques to the United States and has run one of the longest standing, most studied medically oriented mindfulness programs at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And so his definition of mindfulness is sustained voluntary attention in the present moment to an object of our choosing with curiosity and kindness. And so just breaking that down a little bit, what we're doing is we're training our mind to stay where we put it. And we're choosing what we're going to pay attention to. We're doing it in the present moment because that's a big relief for our nervous system. When we rest in the present moment, it's like our nervous system gets to breathe a nice sigh and reset itself. And then with curiosity and kindness is really important. We hear so often from people, I'm a terrible meditator, I can't do this, my mind is running all over the place. And in reality, that's what our minds always do, but we typically don't pay attention to it. And so the mindfulness practice allows us to know what the mind is doing and then make choices on what we engage in and what we choose to kind of let go. And in terms of why it's so important right now, with what's going on, there are a whole host of different kinds of practices in mindfulness, but essentially we're aware of what is going on with us in the present moment. And so often we can have incredible stress built up in the body, but we're not listening to the body. We're not taking the cues from the body and doing what we need to do to care for ourselves. We may not be aware of the emotions that we're feeling, or we're pushing them away. We may not be aware of all the joy that's out there in the world. Our brains are hardwired to see threats versus the things that are really good for us. And so mindfulness allows us to be much more resilient in the face of turbulence. And I believe that Carol probably just joined us by phone.
Carol?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. So I apologize for our technical issues. Welcome.
Yep.
We're so happy to have you. I had just introduced Erica a minute ago. Let me take the opportunity to introduce you. I'm so glad you're with us. Carol Scheer is a registered nurse, and she's a mindfulness-based stress reduction facilitator. She studied at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and at Duke University Integrative Health. And she's a facilitator for the Community Mindfulness Project. And in fact, Carol is the one who recorded the 20-minute experiential session that you'll be able to watch on YouTube. I've already done it myself about 4 times. She talks about a little bit about what is mindfulness, and she goes into the science, which of course is important, and what are the benefits of the mindfulness practice. And then she takes us through a really beautiful 10-minute experiential. And so I do hope you all will head to the YouTube channel and watch that. So Carol, I had just asked Erica, like, what is mindfulness and why is it so important for us to develop a mindfulness practice during these really challenging times we're in?
Yes, I heard what Erica had said. And so having this menu of practices really in our toolbox, so to speak, that we can draw upon can really help to settle us down, open us up, broaden up our perspective so we're not so closed in and feeling so isolated. That all by itself makes us feel very stressed. So that the practices serve to calm us and also open us up. And by so doing, it calms down our central nervous system and allows us to perceive what's going on in a broader way.
Great. So I want to share a study with you that I found. It's from the University of Virginia, and it was published in the journal Science. It's actually, I'm reading from Time magazine. I want to share the title with you. You would rather endure electric shocks than sit alone with your thoughts, this study finds. So yeah, are you too familiar with this this study? It came out in 2014, but I think it's quite quite provocative, actually. So in 11 studies, they found participants typically did not enjoy spending 6 to 15 minutes in a room by themselves with nothing to do but think. And they enjoyed doing some kind of external activity more, like administering electric shocks to their fingers. So 67% of the men gave themselves shocks, whereas 25% of the women gave themselves shocks. There was one outlier, and it was a man, and he gave himself how many shocks? Over 100. 190 shocks in an 8 to 15 minute period, sticking his finger in. So it just, I really want to talk about, so many of my cancer patients say, I can't meditate. I mean, my thoughts are all over the place. This just shows how difficult it is for people to sit with all of this going on. What do you do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in real quick just to say that the mind typically wanders every 5 seconds. So if you think about that one individual giving himself 190 shocks over the span of 8 minutes, right? It's almost as though every time his mind went off somewhere else and he left the present moment, he was deeply uncomfortable, right? And so what we find is that we're much happier when we're grounded in the present moment, because the region of the brain that allows us to remain in the present moment is a region of the brain that is less prone to I, me, and my thinking, rumination, looping thought. And so when his mind was leaving the present moment, he was getting deeply uncomfortable. And there's a great quote that's attributed to Ursula Le Maat, which is, my mind is a scary neighborhood and I prefer not to go there alone.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's why guided meditations, meditation done in community, is very often very supporting for people. So we'd encourage people, maybe if they're finding it really stressful, to sit down and say, as of this moment, my mind must stop, which is unrealistic, right? People have the idea that that might be meditation, which it's not. To try either a live conference call meditation or try a recorded guided meditation. But essentially what mindfulness isn't shutting out all thought. Mindfulness is noticing when the mind is thinking, and then choosing if we want to redirect our attention back to the breath or back to sounds in the room or sensations in the body, or if we want to follow that thought because really it's a time in the day when thinking and creativity is really important for us and we need to pursue the thought. Carol, what would you add?
I would just add that there was a study done by Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison where he took long-term meditators who, and I'm remembering it was 10 or 20,000 hours, and he told them in advance that they were going to be given an electric shock. And he compared what happened by a functional MRI with them as compared to just the regular person who was told the same thing. And what they found was very surprising and dramatic insofar as the monks who had so many thousands of hours of meditation experience, they knew in advance that they were going to be shocked, but their baseline didn't really change until they were actually shocked, at which time there was a lot of reactivity and a lot going on in the brain that they could measure, and then their recovery was very quick as compared to the regular person who was anticipating being shocked, their anxiety levels and their emotional and mental and physical reactivities were very, very high in advance of even receiving the shock. And then it took them much longer to recover. So the point was that these meditation practices really do help to serve to calm us, irregardless of what's coming at us and how we're interpreting that. So it was very interesting.
To all of our attendees, are there any questions? I've got an eye on the chat. Please feel free to write in any comments or thoughts. I find one thing when I'm teaching meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation, people often will start crying. And what I want to ask the two of you is, I know when we come to sit with all of these difficult emotions we have right now, anger, heartbreak, fear, anxiety, what do you tell your students? How do they just sit and allow all of these emotions to come?
This is Carol. I'll just say that is what mindfulness meditation is all about, is to encounter and to engage what's here. Normally, emotions arise and our knee-jerk reactivities are to do whatever we normally do. We run, we think, we try to problem solve, we self-medicate, we do all kinds of things to get away from those kinds of emotions, when in fact the most caring and kind thing we can do is when they arise like that, this tsunami of thoughts and stories that are accompanying what's going on in our minds, is to bring attention to that and simply name what's here, and offering ourselves great care and compassion in that moment. And Kristen Neff at the University of Texas at Austin, I think, has a great way of approaching this, where you name what's here. You know, what's here is, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious, I'm really worried. And then reminding yourself that you're not alone. It's normal to feel upset. It's normal to feel anxious. And there are those around you who support you, and a team of people who are there to help you and to guide you. And then to offer yourself some phrases of care. Something like, you know, I'm here for you, may you be at ease, or sweetheart, you've got this, or whatever words or gestures that might feel comforting to you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was going to say, the great thing is that as you begin to pay attention, I think our fear is that when we encounter an emotion, we're going to be stuck with that emotion for a really long period of time, right? And so as we begin to open ourselves to what our emotional experience is, we become aware that emotions are sort of fleeting, that they last for 60 to 90 seconds at a time, that the minute we stop resisting them, they kind of lose their grip on us. And so 5 minutes after being in the throes of something that feels like heartbreak, we can see a goldfinch outside the window and feel an upwelling of a sense of joy, or feel a sense of connection with a human being who reaches out to us. And all of that is really important. When we start paying attention, we start being less controlled by some of these things that we feel.
Yeah. I think it's also really important for everyone who tries to meditate to just remember, if the tears come, that's normal and it's okay. I just want to jump into, I'm starting to see some questions come up now. Is there any research that shows how early in one's meditation practice, a day of practicing, a week, etc., people start feeling more positive emotions?
I know that, again, Richard Davidson's research at the University of Wisconsin has revealed that loving kindness meditation in particular, we seem to have a quite affinity to that. And as in as few as 6 to 8 sessions that they can measure changes in the brain as it relates to calming when practicing loving kindness. An extension of care to ourselves, and that practice involves extending phrases of care to ourselves to a loved one, to what we might call a neutral person, someone we don't know very well in our life, a mail carrier or a grocery clerk, and a challenging or a difficult person in our world, and then more generally, globally, to everyone. So I think it's really interesting that that's something that we take to, and we can see the results of quite so quickly. I think it's really remarkable and speaks a lot to who we are as a species.
I think too, adding on to that, and this ties in with, I think all of the questions that have come up so far, how you and the attitude that you bring to the practice is really, really crucial. So for the first however long that I meditated, starting about 20 years ago, I would just count my breaths in the morning before I would go to work. So an inhale 1 and an exhale 1, and inhale 2 and an exhale 2. And every time the mind would wander, I would start over. Well, in the beginning of my practice, I would get so frustrated, like, how come I never get to 6? I'm so sick of the number 3, and that really didn't make it very easy for me to practice or to feel good about myself. I looked at that noticing the mind wandering as a failure. In fact, that's the magic moment of the practice. And so if we smile every time we see the mind wandering, or we notice that, and maybe we have a sense of humor, I love to kind of label it like, oh, that's a romantic comedy, that's a horror movie, like you inject a sense of humor, you smile, you treat the mind like a little puppy that's, you're trying to train it to sit and stay in one place, and it's going to wander all over the place. And so when it does that, you use that same kindness and gentleness that you would use with a puppy, and you smile and you bring the mind back and you say, okay, well, right now, there's nothing for me to do but sit here and be aware of my breath. And if you can have that kind of an attitude, you'll start to feel better much sooner than if you're beating yourself up and seeing yourself as failing.
So we have a follow-up to that from the same person, and she says, in my practice, I have seen a change immediately toward the positive mood or emotion, but I haven't seen recent research that supports that. Yeah. Another question, what's a reasonable amount of time to meditate to see the effects? So just another way of asking the question, is there a certain number of minutes per day that one needs to practice, or is it an everyday thing?
So again, the science, there have been many, many different studies. There's a wonderful book, which I don't have right in front of me right now, called Altered Traits, and that's by Richie Davidson, who Carol had mentioned before, and Daniel Goleman, where they sort of go back and they define what makes a gold standard for a study in something like meditation and mindfulness. And then they go through all the studies, I think up through 2014. So there are many different ways of testing this. One Harvard study showed that I think it was 27 minutes for several weeks on end, ended up resulted in an increase in gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. Now that's huge. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're feeling the effects right away. That's much more specific. That's saying that this brain that we used to think would develop by the age of 25 and be static for a while and then decline, that now it can develop, and then we can actually continue to show increases in gray matter density versus a drop off in their gray matter density in the part of our brain, which is really our executive function center. On the flip side to that, at the other end of the spectrum, there is Rick Hansen, who's a psychologist who studies the effects of gratitude practice on the brain and body, has written a book called Hardwiring Happiness, which says that 60 to 90 seconds, several times a day, of just pausing in recognition of the goodness that's in our lives. It could be a ham sandwich, it could be the sunrise, whatever it is, that pausing for 60 to 90 seconds, that will actually lead us to be happier. Carol, I don't know if you'd add more.
I would just say that in students that I've taught mindfulness-based stress reduction, and in the literature, they'll say that other people notice changes in you before you notice them in yourself. So they notice that you're calmer. They notice you're less reactive. They notice that you feel more like your old self. Spouses in particular have commented about that. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to talk a little bit about, I mean, a lot of people say to me, you know, do I have to sit cross-legged on the floor for 30 minutes every day? And I think it's important for individuals to know that you can really weave mindful moments throughout the day into your daily activities. And one of my favorite practices is the acronym STOP, STOP. Yeah, do one of you want to sort of share it with the group, what that is?
STOP, it stands for, the S is for stop, and the T is take a breath, and the O is observe, and the P is proceed. So when we're sitting in a meditation practice, a formal practice, that's the only thing we're doing is meditating. But if there's an overall goal, it's to take what we're learning in our practice and apply it in our everyday life. We call that in an informal way. So when moments arise that are distressing, then we're able to access and draw upon our experience so that we can stop literally in that moment of upset, take a breath, as my grandmother used to say. Carol, just take a deep breath. Okay, take a deep breath, observe what's here, so that we might become flexible enough to ask ourselves, what's here and what am I needing in this moment? So there's a big piece of self-care right here. And then moving forward and proceeding. And it's in this way that we're able to start to begin to change our relationship with distresses and upsets that arise in daily activities.
Yeah. One tip is to take a sticky pad and write stop on it and put it on your computer, put it in your wallet, put it different places. So it's a reminder during the day when you come across it to really just stop, take a deep breath, observe what's going on in the mind body, and proceed with what you're doing. And it's a 60-second practice that really can be quite beneficial. Yeah.
That's a great idea. That if you think about Serena Williams preparing for a tournament, she goes out and she hits like 2,500 backhands. And every time you look at that sticky and you do that 60-second pause, you're actually preparing yourself for when the road really gets bumpy, right? Viktor Frankl has this great quote, or it was attributed to him, that in between stimulus and response, there is a space. And what meditation and mindfulness really help us to do is live in that space. That's where wisdom lies. That's where choice lies. That's where we move from reaction to response in our lives.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That space is also in the breath. So we often teach in yoga that the breath is more than the inhale and the exhale. Really notice that pause after you inhale. And then you exhale, there's another pause. So it's not just the pause between the thoughts, but the pause in the breath. So I just want to say it's been 30 minutes. If anybody needs to jump off and go to lunch, I know you're probably at work and taking a lunch break to do this, please feel free to jump off. Before you go, copy the link up here to the SIO YouTube channel where you can actually go and watch this 20-minute module that Carol recorded for us. But as I said, we are going to stay on the line. So anybody, we'll just keep going until we see that there are no more participants except for us. Are there any more questions from the group? Are you all meditators? We have another question over here. Erica, it's for you. It says, can you, sorry, I don't have my glasses on, I'm trying to read. Can you talk a little more about emptying the mind? What does that mean?
Sure. I think, and I'm not sure exactly where the questioner is coming from.
It was an early question.
So there is the perception that that when we sit down to meditate, there's a perception that sitting down to meditate, like you said, Lee, is like sitting cross-legged on the floor, taking your seat. You can see, like, I'm immediately furrowing my brow because this is how I think. This is what happens to me when I think about this view of meditation, and that now we're going to stop thinking, and we're going to exist in this space of like non-thought. In actuality, what happens when we sit, particularly at the beginning of the practice, and we begin to pay attention to what the mind does, it's like there's like a wild horse up there running free, and we're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And that's simply because that's always been there, but we didn't happen to notice it. Over time, as we begin to ground ourselves in the present moment, we learn to tune into the breath or to the sounds in the room or sensations in the body. It's like shaking that snow globe with all the flakes in it, and it all settles down, and we begin to become aware of the space between thoughts, the space, just like that space between the in-breath and the out-breath. And what's beautiful about that, when that happens, is that something will come in, a thought will come in, and it's really more like an insight than a regretting what happened yesterday or a worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, or some level of self-judgment about ourselves, right? And that there's going to be like this thought that comes in that's different from other thoughts, and it'll be a creative insight. It might be a new solution you'd not imagined to a previous problem that you were working on, or some sort of an insight about your own relationship, how you interact with others. And so it's not so much that we are forcing things out of the mind. It's that by sitting and just relaxing and opening to and listening, things just kind of settle, and then there's space. I hope that's sort of what the questioner was asking.
Carol, do you have any?
I call it the 10,000-foot view. Instead of getting lost in trances of thinking and our own expertise, you kind of come up like, when you're flying in a low plane or a plane and you're coming in for a landing and you're about 10,000 feet, and you can look down over the treetops and the houses, and you can see they have a swimming pool and they have a walkway and a driveway, but you can't see that they need to trim their shrubs and weed their garden and all of those little details of things. So it kind of pulls you up and out to give you a much broader view. And in that way, then we're able to open our perspective and allow our inner wisdom to come forth and allow ourselves to come up with different types of approaches.
Yeah. Wow. Nice.
I think what we tend to lose sight of in our lives is that deep within each and every one of us is immense stillness and strength, and that it feels almost like that's something we have to go somewhere else to find, to bring back to ourselves. It's still there. It's in us, and meditation and mindfulness allow us to tap into and live in that space.
So for anybody that's on the call that might want to begin a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, and doesn't really know how to get started, can we just spend a couple of minutes? And I'm just going to start out and say, one of the things I always do to begin my day, so I'm still lying in bed, I haven't gotten up yet, and I'm still kind of, in that liminal state between sleep and full consciousness. I do my belly breathing, my diaphragmatic, or my, I call it belly breath. I'll put my hand on my abdomen and I'll breathe through my nose, and I'll just breathe deeply into my belly. A few of those breaths, and then it just really sets my day. If I do that, compared to the days when I wake up and I reach for the cell phone and I'm still in bed, lying down, and I'm scrolling through my emails or social media or whatever, it makes just a tremendous difference in how I approach my day and how the day unfolds with more ease and peace. So how do we begin to meditate?
I think you begin by setting an intention that you want to meditate. There's something about it that seems attractive to you. So can you set aside a few moments? It doesn't have to be long. On the communitymindfulnessproject.org website, there are meditations that are 5 minutes long. And it's kind of curious to try those out even and just see the difference that 5 minutes can make. And then setting an intention to bring some of that increasingly into your life in some regular basis. Knowing that you can meditate anywhere. You can meditate if you're commuting on the train, or maybe not right now, but normally in your house. You can be in a park. You can be in your car. I mean, there's ample opportunities for us to be able to bring this into our lives. And no matter what, as well-intended as we are, it's kind of a human thing, but we'll probably fall off the wagon at some point. And then there arises the judgment. Oh, shoot, look, I did that again and I'm not doing it. And but that's our opportunity to begin again and to wrap yourself in non-judgmental care and compassion, carry on. And meditate with other people, joining us on the community mindfulness calls. Those are structured, so that can be helpful to know that we're right there and available. And I also recommend meditating with some guidance, particularly at the beginning, because I think that that's really helpful. So either in the form of our group sessions or using apps that are available on our phones, I think that serves to really support people as they grow in their practice.
So let's give everyone your website in case anyone wants to dial in for some of these sessions that you offer. What's your website?
Sure, it's communitymindfulnessproject.org.
Oh, that's easy.
I think even Community Mind works. So that should come up when you type that in. And then right at the bottom of the home page, there's a link that says the live call-in meditations, and you click on that. It gives you the phone number. They're all free. They're audio only, and they're available 17 days a week.
That's amazing. I mean, that's just amazing. They also, on their website, they also have recorded meditations that are free. You can hop on and listen to a variety and everything from breath awareness, body scan, loving kindness, self-compassion, and their resources, books you can read, ways to take a deeper dive into this practice.
I should point out too on there that what we're finding now is that young people are actually really interested in meditation and mindfulness. And so on the website, there's a 4-part series, very short meditations by young adults for young adults. So if you want to share them with young adults, those are there too.
Oh, that's great. And I know you were trying to do some in Spanish. So what's going on with that for our Spanish speaking friends?
Yes, see, we expect to have our first 1 or 2 meditations available in Spanish within the next week or 2, actually, and then hope to add more from there. And for people that are hearing impaired, anybody can email us and we'll send them the transcripts of all of our meditations as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for adding that. Okay. We have a few people still on the line. What do you think? Should we, any more questions? We have lots of thank yous coming through. Thank you all for attending, all of the people who registered and showed up.
And we are always available at welcome@communitymindfulnessproject.org. If anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out.
Great. So I guess we will sign off. I'm going to give you just a second if you have any more questions. And if not, we will wrap up. Oh, great. We got another thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that looks like that. So this was just a quick introduction to mindfulness. And throughout the summer, through the Wellness Wednesdays, we'll be taking deeper dives into different kinds of mindfulness practices. There are the the concentration and focus practices, and then there are the opening and loving kindness practices. We'll also be looking at different traditions of meditation, Indian traditional practice, where we'll actually look at introducing the mudra, which are the hand positions, the mantra, which is the repetition, and different breathing practices that support this. We'll have a sound bath meditation that a board certified music therapist will be bringing. That'll be all different kinds of instruments to help us relax. It's a different experience with the music. Lots of other things in store. The complete summer schedule will be posted on the SAO website. Just bear with us. We're still confirming dates and getting everything settled, but within the next couple of days, it should be on. So I want to thank, first, I'd like to thank all of the participants for joining, and I hope you'll make this a standing appointment for wellness every Wednesday at lunchtime. And oh my gosh, open arms to Carol and to Erica. So much gratitude for the work you do in the world.
Right back at you. Gratitude for all the work you're doing and everyone at SIO.
Yeah, and thanks to SIO for the amazing support so that we could actually get this programming going.
Absolutely, okay. It's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Carol. All right, so see you next Wednesday. Have a great day.